Jigsaw Radio is a work of instant fiction. All characters and other entities appearing in this work are fictitious. Any resemblance to real persons, dead or alive, or other real-life entities, past or present, is purely coincidental or employed for the purpose of satire. Please listen responsibly. Jigsaw Radio is sponsored by Ghibli hats. That's right, Ghibli hats. Always putting things on your head. That's Ghibli hats, sponsoring Jigsaw Radio this hour. Please visit their website at ghiblighibli.com. The moon. It sits there in the sky over all of us. We see it a lot. It's up there. We can see it. We're not really confused by it anymore. I'm sure that somewhere long ago in the far past of our ancient race, we probably were confused by the sight of some strange glowing mass, some idyllic sphere floating high over the horizon. But now, we're just used to the moon. The moon's just part of us. It's part of what we are. Except for sometimes, when it still confuses us. Not long ago, there was a time when the moon confused a lot of us. It was a time just a few weeks ago. It started in Vienna, spread throughout Europe, went to a global phenomenon. The moon, ever present in our skies, suddenly became a thing that we all looked up at again and thought, what is that? What is that thing? What could we possibly be doing with that thing over our heads? This is Tara Gracie. You're listening to Jigsaw Radio. Today we're going to be talking about the moon. We're going to be talking about the moon over our heads and trying to understand a little bit about maybe what it was that we found so confusing. First on our show today, we're going to be talking to Chris Jinglinge. Now, many of our viewers know Chris Jinglinge as a reporter. He is oftentimes found in Europe, reporting on the news, reporting on current events, reporting on various things that happen to us all in this life that we have on our planet. But Chris Jinglinge had a very different response just a few weeks ago in Vienna. I looked up and it was just so big, and I couldn't understand it, and I was fresh off the airplane, and I'd just come from the airport, and I hadn't even checked into my hotel room. I was still pulling the suitcase behind me, and I don't know. It just terrified me. We talked to Chris just a week ago about his experiences reporting the news in Vienna. Chris, so you got on the ground in Vienna, and you said the moon was different. Yes, it was just a totally different thing from what I'm accustomed to. I'm used to phases of the moon. I'm used to the lunar cycle. It makes it. I thought that it made sense in all of my years, in my 45 years on this planet. I thought that I understand the moon, but something about that Thursday just confused me. So Chris, you were in Vienna to report on an unrelated science story, is that correct? Yes, I was going to be in Vienna to report on a space mission that was going to be a preliminary trip sending equipment and supplies to supply a Mars colony, and it was launching from Europe, which was a very exciting thing. I thought, yes, it would be a very exciting thing. Yes, and I was there. I was going to be talking to some scientists. And the flights were delayed, and so I had to go straight to their lab in Vienna, and I found myself there in this lab, surrounded by models of spaceships and small tchotchkes, all revolving around planets. They're very into the things that they like there, and I think it just got into my head. I'm rather ashamed. You're ashamed. You say that you're ashamed of it? Yeah. Well, Tara. I do pride myself on my reporting, and so to give such a furious and panicked and brief account of what I saw as going on, it wasn't my finest professional moment, to say the least. So Chris Jinglinge, he got to the lab, and he found many scientists there who are thinking about our solar system and thinking about sending things into the space outside of our small blue-green planet, our tiny little corner of our great big universe. And, well, I'll just let Chris explain it. So I get to this lab, and I'm carrying my suitcases, and I haven't eaten in about 16 hours because I was coming over from the States, and then a layover at Heathrow, and then it was a mess. Travel, there's no excuse, but this thing happened. Well, let me explain. You walk into their lab, and it's all domes. It's all domes. Their labs in Vienna are all domes. This Qualidyne Incorporated lab is all domes, and so it's a very unworldly thing. They were explaining to me that they were actually using their labs as testing grounds for structures that could work on exoplanets, and they told me that they just live in domes all the time, and they feel very safe there. So, what made you feel so unsafe then? Well, I think I was just I had low blood sugar, perhaps, or I don't know. But they took me to this one area. They have a dome that has a roof that they can just push a button and it goes clear. And it's not just the sky, it's the sky with annotations. They have a digital readout, and so they can explain all of the things that are in the sky just by pointing at it, and it will bring up information on the dome itself. It's very, very cool. It sounds very interesting. I can't believe the technology that they have in that. Well, it's a little forward thinking, but I think it's useful for them when they're plotting their missions. But they open this dome. They make it open to the sky, and the moon. The moon was just there, and I think I would have been okay with it if I hadn't heard Jurgensen gasp. Maria Jurgensen, the scientist who was assigned to show me around the labs, she gasped, and it took me aback. So, as Chris explained to us, scientist Maria Jurgensen, astrophysics, was actually a shortlister for the astronaut program in England. She gasped because she saw the moon and it was in the wrong place. We all know that this is what happened that Thursday. We all know it was perfectly explainable now, but at the time it was unusual to see the moon so full and so close. Yes, Maria, she actually reached out and she grabbed my shoulder to steady herself, and I wasn't ready for it, so I actually fumbled, and we both sort of fell over on the ground, and she said, "What is that doing there?" And then she sort of coughed and tried to catch herself, and but that's when I started to panic. I there's no other word for it. I panicked. So Chris, if you had to do it over again, would you panic? Tara, I probably would. I probably would panic again. I think it's something I need to work on as a person. I should be a better reporter and actually put these things in the proper perspective. Chris Jinglinge panicked that night because the moon was so close and out of place. And because the people that he trusted, that he was spending time with, they didn't understand. Not at the time. One person did understand, though. It's our own Dr. Kranium. We reach him now through an intergalactic transdimensional portal. Dr. Kranium.
Yes, Tara. I'm happy to talk to you about the moon that I can't see anymore because I'm not there.
Where are you exactly now, Dr. Kranium?
I don't know. I'm on some other plane of existence. It was a lab experience gone wrong. You know how these things go.
Actually, I don't really know how these things go.
Well, I would explain it to you, but I only have this line for a few minutes, so I can only talk to you about the moon according to the calculations that I've made from my end, triangulating through various wormholes that have opened up, so we should probably cut the chit-chat.
Oh, sorry about that, Dr. Kranium. So what did happen with the moon that night?
Well, it's actually rather complicated. You see, the moon, well, to put it in layman's terms, the moon had a hiccup.
A hiccup?
Yes, a hiccup. It was going around its normal orbit, doing the thing that it does, waxing, waning, new, full. The thing that the moon does, it's actually rather boring when you think about it. But actually, on this one time, it saw something shiny, and it lost its place, and so it came forward to look at the shiny thing, and then realized that it wasn't supposed to do that, and so it bounced back into place and went on about its business.
So Dr. Kranium, are you saying that the moon is sentient?
Well, no, not sentient exactly. Just in any sense that all particles in this universe of ours, and indeed in the universe that I now inhabit, are all quantumly entangled. And so, really what happened was the moon, and very few people know this, the moon is quantum entangled with a small dog somewhere in the Midwest. I have yet to pinpoint where this dog happens to be, and that it will be the first thing I do when I do manage to find a portal that's stable enough for me to come back to your space-time continuum. But there's a small dog that is quantum entangled with the moon, and it's usually very well behaved, but on this night, the owner was suffering some distress, and the dog, normally very well behaved, was distracted, and it affected the moon in this way.
Dr. Kranium, is there anything that we can do to prevent this from happening again?
No, probably not, until I find the dog.
That's Dr. Kranium, reporting from a subspace rift somewhere in another universe. You're listening to Jigsaw Radio. Take a short break, check in with our local stations. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Jigsaw Radio. This is Chet Burroughs. Our top headlines. No more sidewalk fires have occurred in East Grumsley. We're very happy to hear about this. No one has been injured. No accidents have happened. No air has moved in any of the city buildings. And mostly we are just waiting, patiently waiting for the inevitability of death. However, there is a new animal at the zoo. We have just received our second raccoon. It has the normal 4 limbs, unlike most of the raccoons at the East Grumsley Zoo. We are happy to see a raccoon that only has 4 limbs. The ones with the tentacles have just become too terrifying for the children. In other news, City Hall, holding their 3rd day of hearings in the park outside of City Hall due to the lack of air movement inside the building. City Hall officials have been quoted as saying, "Wow, it is just so hot in there. When, oh when, will air start to move?" In other news, the people that are going to the hearings have been bringing picnics. This is Jigsaw Radio. In weather, you can expect that small droplets of water will be falling from the sky once again until they stop. Then the small droplets will form large pools on the ground. Those large pools will be inconvenient for people with non-waterproof shoes until they dry up and reform into this horrible, horrible thick smog of humidity that we all have grown to expect here in East Grumsley in July and August every single year for the known span of time. I'm getting word that there was a slight breeze in the courthouse today. There was a slight breeze in the courthouse today. Someone opened a window, and through the miracle of 16 ceiling fans and one incredibly zealous office worker fanning themselves with the newspaper, they were able to get the air, the thick, humid air, to finally move ever so briefly. I'm told that the judge was able to hear exactly 1/4 of one case before the air got too thick again, and everyone adjourned to an ice cream parlor. Ice cream sounds lovely. They didn't invite me. In other news from East Grumsley today, the sports ball teams of sports could not play because of the lack of movement of air. But they did find themselves with one player suspended in midair due to the humidity. Apparently, this player had mistakenly thrown a ball into the air, jumped up to catch it, and then the humidity itself held them in place for over 20 minutes. They slowly oozed back towards the arena floor, wiser. That's all the news from East Grumsley. We'll go back now to Tara Gracie and the moon. Yeah, I remember what I was with when the moon was like, it was like the moon was coming like down on the earth, and like it was looking at us, and we were all like, "What are you doing, moon? You're just like, that's not where you're supposed to be." And so we were all like just laughing and stuff. We were like waving at the moon and stuff. It was actually kind of fun.
Remember that the moon, it was really big, and well, I couldn't really look at it. It was actually too bright, and I sort of just looked down, like, and I like looked down at the ground, but someone had broken a bottle on the ground, and it was reflecting, and so there was just like this little moon there in the bottle, and it was really pretty. Yeah, I remember the moon was like I was already looking at it, and I saw it move, and I thought that I'd moved, but I hadn't moved. But then I moved, and it looked like the moon was where it was supposed to be. But then I moved back, and the moon was still in the wrong place. But then the moon went back, and it was like the moon and I were dancing. It's kind of the best date I ever had. Some people remembering what it was like when the moon came close that night, a few Thursdays ago. I'm Terry Gracie. You're listening to Jigsaw Radio. We're talking tonight about the moon, about that night when the moon came down and went back. We're thinking about all of the things that happened to us that night. I remember I was in the studio. I was preparing for a show. I was listening back to some interview footage that we'd done a few days before with an amazing theater artist who was doing a solo show in the park the following day. And I remember my producer Jerry, she came in and she just said, "Tara, the moon. And then she left, and I was about to go on. I had the headphones on. I didn't really know what to do with that information, but I looked it up online because that's what we do now. I saw the moon come down in a YouTube video because that's where we get our news. And I thought about this amazing theater artist, and I thought, while I was watching this live stream of the moon coming down really close, I was thinking about, how is that going to affect their show? How is that going to affect the thing that they're trying to do? I wasn't thinking about what it meant for society or whether we were all doomed. I was thinking about one solo artist in the park and whether they would be able to tell their stories. This is Jigsaw Radio. We tell stories. Finally tonight, we'll go to the story of a man who maybe has a different take on all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Right. This is Commander Tompkins up on the space station. I apologize if there's any problems with the feed, but we know I am hurtling around the planet at a very high rate of speed, so there's not much I can do about that. It's kind of part of the job, but yeah, I saw the moon. Saw it pretty close. It reminded me of when I was a kid and saw the moon landing on TV the day that I became well, I think of that as the day that I became an astronaut. I obviously I had to go to school and get a couple degrees and qualify for the astronaut program. Finally made it. But I think of that day watching the moon landing as the day I became an astronaut. This is my last trip up here. Getting a little old to be up in space floating around. These old bones have degenerated enough, but I tell you, I always wanted to go to the moon, but knew I'd never make it. Scientific missions to the moon just don't happen that often anymore, and well, I'm just too old. So it was quite a sight. See it. Sorry, a little interference there. It's quite a sight. Just looking out, I was looking up from one of the experiments that we have going up here. We've got it's actually a modified ant colony. I could go into greater detail, but I looked out the window, and there it was. Moon was right there. Commander was a little bit worried because it was sort of in our path. Thought maybe we'd end our tour up here crashing into the moon, but no, that was fine. It's like the moon just dipped down and said hello. Just came right up there. We saw it. And the one thing I remember is the change in gravity was sudden, and just about everything on the space station just kind of shifted, just a little bit, just like you were leaning an incline, seeing wheels slowly start moving down that incline. I just stared at the moon and cried a little. Happy and sad, both. And then it went away, went back to where it goes. You've been passing it ever since. Nothing strange, just the moon.
This has been Jigsaw Radio. Thank you for joining us. If you have some stories about the moon that you'd like to share, please let us know. We'll join you next week. More stories from this great big universe of ours.